Good evening. I'd like to invite up your council member, Ben Kalos. And your mayor, Bill de Blasio. You're fine right there. So I'd like to invite up Eason Ryder to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Eason? Right.
Where's our flag?
There we go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well done. Thank you, Eason. All right, good voice.
Thank you, Eason. So I'd like to thank our host this evening, MS 114, the East Side Middle School, and Principal David Getz. And our co-sponsors this evening, Manhattan Community Board 8, Lita Camp, the new chair, and District Manager Will Brightbill, who's the new district manager. Also, the Lennox Hill Neighborhood House. Thank you so much for co-sponsoring this evening. So before we hear from your council member and the mayor, I'd like to bring up your state senator, Liz Kruger, to give some greetings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Hello, Mr. Mayor. Welcome to the community. Oh, wait, you live here. You're here all the time.
That's right.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. I feel like I should do some kind of like sports analogy because when they were being introduced, didn't you feel like we're going to play basketball suddenly? Or I don't play. Yeah, well, I'm not playing either of you. I'm very glad to see the mayor here in our community, so many of his commissioners, perhaps all of them. I don't know. Hi, everyone. Our phenomenal city council member, Ben Kalos. I just came back from Albany. The budget came out yesterday. I will get sadder and sadder as I read more of it. There are some reasons to be sad. There are some reasons to be mad, and I don't know whether it will come up tonight, but I'll just mention, as much as I appreciate how hard it is to balance the state's budget, one of the things we seem to be doing this year, Mr. Mayor, is shifting all the costs to you, so that programs that the states had obligations for forever and says they will continue in the fine print, but here in New York City, the city will pay for it. So I don't know if you thought you had your budget balanced, but you don't at the rate that the state is moving. So we have more work to do. I enjoy very much these town halls, the opportunity I've had to listen to people. I also want to say, I know people come to town hall meetings, they have objections, they have complaints about government, they want answers. That's what you should be doing. And I just want to say, I'm so impressed that Mayor de Blasio has been going to every single community throughout the city. And I guess not everyone is just a massive love fest all the time, because that's life in government. Right? It's hard. Democracy's hard. Solving big picture problems are hard. And I am sometimes questioning of our federal government, but very, very proud that we live here in New York State, in New York City, where by and large, we have phenomenal elected officials. And most of the time, I see all of our police officers, most of the time we live in peace together. Because of our diversity, not in spite of our diversity. So I hope everyone has a good opportunity to learn and to ask questions and to also know, please, please feel free to get in touch with my office if there's anything you think we can be doing to help you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Your state senator, Liz Kruger. Now let's hear for your council member, tonight's moderator, Ben Kalos.
Good evening. Good evening. One more time, we want to give a Upper East Side welcome to our mayor. Good evening. Good evening. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm your council member, Ben Kalos. Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you, is this your first interaction with government, your first government meeting that you've been to? Okay, how many of you have already had a chance to meet me, perhaps at a town hall, at your building, things like that? Okay, so we'll, that's good. For those of you who are new, I'm Councilmember Ben Kalis. I represent 168,000 people on the Upper East Side, East Harlem, East Midtown, and Roosevelt Island. Also, Youthant Island, which is just for the birds. Throughout this evening, our mayor is going to take questions from you, and this is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't had a chance to meet me yet, I hope that you'll take the opportunity. The first Friday of every month, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., we call it First Fridays. Second Tuesday of the month, we do brainstorming with Ben and children in my district. We actually brought it to Eastside Middle School where we're standing, and the kids authored legislation to bring GSAs into our public schools, and they actually passed it. So if you have not passed a law by middle school in this district, you may be an underachiever. We also do, we have legal clinics in our office, and we also do something called Ben in Your Building. I take inspiration from my faith, and if you gather 10 people together, I'm not orthodox about it, so it can be men, women, or gender nonconforming, but I will show up at your co-op or condo annual meeting and address the concerns that are most local to you on your block, whether it's that pothole or a traffic issue that you might have. And so our partner in government is the mayor. On the legislative side, which the mayor has been on, we kind of get to take the information from our constituents and pass it on to a lot of the commissioners who are sitting here tonight and our mayor who actually do all the work. And so when you call me and we pass on your concern about a pothole, I'm not the one who's actually out there filling the pothole. I know some of you will say, Ben, why aren't you out there with the shovel? But it's the great folks at DOT led by Polly Trottenberg who just gets those potholes fixed and has been repaving all of our streets on the Upper East Side. Can I see a show of hands if you've had your street repaved in the past 4 years? So that's one of the other great things. Along the same lines, the commutes on the Upper East Side used to be really tough. We got the 2nd Avenue subway, but we've also got select bus service on the M79 and M86, thanks to the mayor and the leadership over at DOT. A lot of us in our hearts have always wanted universal pre-K. It's something that I was interested in as one of 51 candidates for city council, but the mayor made it what he campaigned on, and it was his core issue. It is something that when he got elected, he went to Albany and won universal pre-K, and it's something that was hard to win and even harder to implement, and we've been working together over the past 4 years. But the difference is, instead of having somebody who didn't want to do universal pre-K, it was actually a conversation of how do we get it done on the Upper East Side. Now, we don't agree on everything. There's one big issue we don't agree on, but other issues we do agree on is investing in our parks. In my first year in office, when Rockefeller University was willing to invest $10 million in our East River Esplanade, the mayor actually matched it and gave $35 million. That got the ball rolling. Absolutely. And he's even tripled that investment, which he'll talk about more. I don't want to get too much into his talking points. And I think the piece that I wanted to talk most about, which is one of the special things that's happened, is sometimes residents come out and they have a complaint. And we pass it on and we can't get it done. And that's when, if you've ever been to my meetings, I'll tell you we do the worst thing we can do for you, which is introduce legislation. The best thing government can do is just fix your problem. The worst thing we can do is actually have to pass a law on it. But do we have Pamela Tucker and Richard McIntosh here? If I can get you to come up to the front row. They came to First Friday month after month, I think over 6 months, complaining about construction noise across an avenue from them. And it was actually one of the noisiest construction sites in the city of New York. We've now learned that we have some of the most construction in Community Board 8 in the city. And so they kept making noise. It was after hours, which meant before 7 a.m. and after 6 p.m. and on weekends. And the law just wasn't working. And so we actually, in response, we drafted legislation. We introduced it. It made the cover of the local paper, which is the New York Times, and we were close on it. And what we were able to do is work with the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, Vincent Sapienza, and his amazing team. And initially it started off as just When there's noise, people should come out when that noise is being made or when it's going to happen again. And we actually expanded it. And we actually are going to be turning down the volume on after-hours construction noise in residential neighborhoods over the next 2 years. And so I can only draft the legislation. In addition to implementing it, somebody actually has to sign it, so I'm hoping that the mayor will do so tonight. And if you can please join me in welcoming our mayor, Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Thank you. Ben is hoping I will sign legislation tonight. This is certainly a very leading reality here, suggesting that something good is about to happen. I want to first welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of this town hall meeting. It is, I just want to say this up front, a very, very challenging moment in our nation's history, particularly on the topic of protecting and preserving our democracy. And I'm a good Democrat, but I was very moved by Senator Flake's speech today, and it was a good thing to see for our country. I say that because tonight here in this room, we see that which we are preserving, the very notion that citizens can come out and make their demands and ask their tough questions and hold government accountable. And it is something to celebrate, but I also want to thank you because we are the hardest working place on the planet here in New York City. Everyone would have a very good excuse after a long, hard day to not come out for a few hours to a community meeting, but everyone in this room chose to come out anyway and participate. So please give your neighbor a round of applause. And I, too, have the honor of being your neighbor over on that little cottage on East 88th Street. And I hope some of you came over for the open houses we had around the holidays, and we're going to be doing a lot more of that in the years to come. I want to talk about your council member. You could hear when Ben gave his opening comments. This is an extraordinarily earnest person who really is in public service for the right reasons. He works on the issues that are everyday life issues that he talked about, but he also works on some of the big reforms and changes that we need to make our government work better on behalf of the people. So I really want to thank him for all he's doing for the community. And specifically, he took on the issue of noise and believed that we needed to do a better job. Now, I said we're the hardest working city in the country. We may be the noisiest city in the country, too. And we all have to do a lot to address that. And I'll be working with Ben and others, not only on this legislation, but other measures going forward. But I want to thank him for taking on the issue, finding a way to do something new and better. And Ben, you're right on one level. When you have to legislate, it means something is not working. I also, being an optimist by nature, would argue when you're legislating, you're figuring out a better way to do something. So in this case, after hard work, the noise construction bill was passed. It will lower the allowable noise limits. It will create clear response times for noise complaints, and will allow for more issuing of stop work orders when the rules are not being followed. So it's a really good piece of legislation. Now let's have a little moment of democracy. Who here believes I should sign this legislation? Okay. The ayes have it, Ben. bill is now law. All right, you got some democracy in action there. So, let me just say a few more things up front before we open this up. I want to thank Liz Kruger, one of the strongest, most powerful, most progressive, most reform-minded voices in Albany, and Lord knows we need more of them. Let's thank her for all she does. Liz, I'm going to say something to you that you don't even need to hear, but please don't ever change. I don't think you will. Thank you also for cautioning everyone about the shenanigans we expect in Albany related to the budget. Yes, there has been an incessant effort, not just from Albany, from Washington as well, to push expenses down to the local level. The quaint old idea of the unfunded mandate is now on steroids and is becoming a commonplace that's actually really dangerous for the ability of local governments to provide services. We need to fight it. Liz, I know you will be in the lead in Albany to protect our interests. Let's thank her for all she does. Now, this evening, I'm going to say just a couple more opening comments on a few issues so you hear some updates, and then we're going to open it up to everyone. Ben's going to take questions. I just want to urge everyone, please, we want to try and get to as many questions and comments as possible. The way to do that is one topic per person. I know people have a lot, but if we, in the vein of share the wealth, if everyone could just bring up one thing, bring it up as succinctly as possible. I'll try and answer with my colleagues as succinctly as possible. The goal is to get to as many people as possible. We'll go to about 9:15 or so. At the end, you have an opportunity, if any topic you raise, or if any topic you wanted to raise didn't come up, or you want to follow up, you also have the opportunity to talk to these great folks. Now, here we have assembled the heads of a lot of the most important agencies in the city government. So I always tell people, at a town hall meeting, you kind of get a bonus round. After the formal meeting is the informal opportunity, no appointment needed, to just walk up and talk to these folks and raise your concerns. Now, it's been a long day. This evening will go on for a few hours. You may be concerned that it's not fair to keep them here late. But they are outstanding public servants, so deeply devoted to their work, they will be here all night if you want them to. A few quick updates I want to run through. And the first is the one we should all be proud of as New Yorkers as we embark on this new year. What the people of this city achieved in 2017, and most particularly what the men and women of the NYPD achieved, is the safest year we have had in this city since the 1950s. I want to thank all the leadership of the NYPD here. Outstanding job, everyone, and please to all the men and women under your command. You all have a lot to be proud of. To give you an example, the last time there were under 300 murders in New York City, the Dodgers were still playing in Brooklyn, okay, in 1951. You have to go back to 1951 to see such a low rate of homicides in the city. It's outstanding. We intend to go farther. Part of why that happened was the philosophy of neighborhood policing that's really taking hold all over the city. That was achieved with great support from the City Council, including, over the last few years, adding 2,000 more officers on patrol, which has been a game changer. Thank you, Ben, and to all the City Council for helping to make that happen. Our neighborhood policing initiative, and particularly our neighborhood coordination officers who lead the way in that effort and build deeper bonds with the community, that initiative is spreading all over the city, and all of the precincts that touch this council district will have the NCO initiative by October of this year, every single precinct. So that's going to be very good for the community and for deepening the safety in this community. Now, safety takes many forms. A lot of people here know how much I care about our Vision Zero initiative to lower pedestrian fatalities. That's been a crucial part of what we are doing, and that's working, and we're going to keep deepening that. That takes a lot of forms. One of the areas where there's been a growing level of concern around the city, and particularly in parts of Manhattan, has been the electric bicycles. And this is, boy, if you ever want a government loophole, e-bikes have been illegal to use in New York City. That's what the state law says. Somehow the state law allowed them to be possessed in New York City, but not used in New York City. I started hearing more and more complaints, including from people who called into the Brian Lehrer show on WNYC. And it became clear that we had a huge problem that needed to be addressed forcefully. And then when we looked into all the legal ramifications, it was abundantly clear that the law was just very, very consistent. We should not allow e-bikes on the streets of the city. A lot of folks who work with e-bikes, delivery people, et cetera, we recognize that we did not want them to bear the brunt for an illegality that was actually being created by the stores and the restaurants they were working for. So we came out with a very clear policy that started just last week, that we will not allow e-bikes on the streets. The NYPD will aggressively enforce, and if there is violations, the fines will go on the businesses. So they will be held accountable. And you will see more and more NYPD activity to make sure there are not e-bikes creating a safety problem in this city. I'm going to go through very quickly just a couple other areas. Probably after public safety, which is the universal issue of concern for all New Yorkers, the issue I hear about the most is affordability. As someone once eloquently said, the rent is too damn high. This is an issue all over the city. People care deeply. Our response has been to try and address all the different elements of affordability, all the ways we can help protect folks who are in rent-stabilized housing, which is between 2 and 2.5 million New Yorkers. And we've created a lot more fairness in the Rent Guidelines Board, which is why there were rent freezes for 2 years, because there was an honest look at the real issues. And a host of other things, but one of the things that we've focused on is creating more new affordable housing and preserving in place through subsidy apartments that are affordable right now. We just announced earlier this week that this city has achieved a record in 2017. Almost 25,000 affordable apartments were financed by this city in 2017. Enough for over 75,000 New Yorkers. So we're very, very proud of that. And they are all over the city. And an example is at 1850 2nd Avenue, where 49 permanently affordable apartments are being rehabbed right now, working with the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens. And most of those are going to be for seniors and seniors on fixed incomes so they can continue to live in the community they love. We're going to be doing a lot more to protect the ability of people to stay in their own neighborhood. Now, one of the issues people are, I said affordability is probably the number one, but it connects to something I'm sure that will come up tonight, which is the way the city's changed. As this city became more and more appealing, including safer and safer, more and more people wanted to move in, more and more people wanted to build things. Lord knows that is a double-edged sword. And we've seen huge development pressures. And I know there's been real concern in this community, particularly about these super tall buildings that we have seen cropping up. I want to thank the council member because he was very persistent on a particular site near Sutton Place and the concerns there about how out of scale the development would be. And he came to us and said, could we work together to create some balance and make sure that this development didn't put the entire neighborhood out of scale. We were able to work together and achieve that change. So thank you, council member. Very quickly, just a couple other announcements. And Ben alluded to it before, parks and open spaces mean so much to everyone in the community. The thing that is a passion for me, and I believed in it all my life as something that we should do more of, getting people access to the waterfront. We all know that somehow decades ago, our forebears decided to build cities here and elsewhere that turned away from the waterfront. We have been progressively trying to turn back to the waterfront and reconnect to the waterfront. I've always been amazed that we didn't have a promenade that went all the way around Manhattan. I have the joy of living at Gracie Mansion to walk the promenade now, and it is so clear to me how great it would be the day that we are able to unite the whole borough, and that is our plan, and it begins with an investment of $100 million to close the gap between East 53rd and East 61st. So that is starting now. I also, as a neighborhood constituent, Ben, I would walk up to the point where the pedestrian bridge was supposed to go from the promenade down to the Esplanade at East 81st, and I would wonder what was taking so long to finish it. As a constituent, I was concerned. I also happened to be mayor, so I placed a few calls, and I said, what's taking so long? You know when you're looking at a construction site and it appears to be all finished and you're trying to figure out why it's not open? But the good news is that the folks who were working on that project did complete it. It's an accessible pedestrian bridge, which is very important to make sure that open spaces are available to all. So that is finally open at East 81st Street. Another investment I'm happy to report is that we will be, on East 59th Street, we will be rebuilding. This is a beautiful name, 14 Honey Locust Park. What a great name for a park. We will be putting in almost $2 million to revive that park and make it available to the community. We are looking forward to that. A couple other very quick points. Another area everyone in this room can relate to, it is we love our city. It is hard to get around in our city. We need more and better ways to get around. One of the things that has been most successful is select bus service. It's really been an exciting new option, and we announced some weeks ago there will be 21 new select bus service routes. One of them will be soon confirmed for this council district. We are looking at several options. I think the most obvious is East 96th Street. But we will continue to do that work to create more options. Now, also, again, I mentioned while we're trying to get people around, we want to keep them safe on the streets. Vision Zero has been really central to our efforts at safety. We're going to continue it. We're going to deepen it. I want to tell you, very proud of this, and NYPD and DOT and Taxi and Limousine Commission all were part of this success. This is really a wonderful thing to celebrate. 2017, safest year on record in terms of reducing pedestrian fatalities. They went down 32% from 2016 to 2017. So everyone has a lot to be proud of. We've got to keep finding ways to protect people, and some of that is traffic calming, and a lot of that we hear from the community and we act on, and I know people on East 90th between 1st and York asked for a speed bump, and that will be done by April. We are happy to be putting that in. Very quickly, another area I hear a lot about is concern for small business. We love our neighborhood small businesses. They're part of the character of the neighborhood. We see what's happening with retail. A lot is happening in our society that's making it tougher on retail. I will say the thing I say at every town hall meeting, while we're trying to find governmental solutions, everyone can help by shopping local, buying local. The stores you love, please make sure you patronize them. But working with Ben and other council members, we did sign a bill just a few weeks back to change the commercial rent tax to lift a real burden from a lot of small businesses here in Manhattan. My last 2 points. One is about, I mentioned at the beginning, Ben Kalos has been known as a voice for reform, and particularly for making the election process work better and helping people participate in our democracy. I am going to say to Liz Kruger, I think this is something we share a lot of common ground on. We need this year to achieve in Albany the changes in the New York State election laws that have been needed for decades. I know you're one of the leaders. This is one of the hardest states in which to vote in the United States of America. That's the sad, hard truth. There are states that are downright conservative, red as they can be, that allow early voting, that allow same-day registration. Somehow, we don't do that in New York State. It's time that we demand it, and we need Liz's help to get it done, so thank you. But Ben Kalos recognized that we had apparently arrived in the 21st century and that people should be allowed to register to vote online. When he first came up with the idea, it met with knee-jerk resistance from the Board of Elections, as do many good ideas. But he worked it through and passed the law in the council, and I signed it, so now that people in this city can register online. And that's wonderful, isn't it? And my very last point, Ben mentioned in the beginning, I was very clear. Sometimes in life things are simple and straightforward. When I ran for mayor, I said #1 priority was pre-K for all. I want to thank everyone who helped to achieve that, everyone who supported us in that effort. This community has been frustrated for good reason. That has taken us a long time to figure out how to create the capacity needed. I don't think anyone is underestimating the challenge we faced. One of the most built-up communities in all of New York City. There weren't a lot of options to work with, but we said, please be patient, because we would make sure that we would get there. So now what I want to let you know is that we have taken a series of actions. Ben has been very persistent as usual, but it's something we wanted to do. It was a labor of love for everyone involved. When we started, there were only 116 pre-K, full-day pre-K seats in this entire council district, 116. For the school year we are in now, there are 550 pre-K seats in this district. We will add another 200 in September, this coming September. We will add another 180 on top of that in September of 2019. By that point, we believe we will be able to accommodate every family in this council district with a full-day pre-K seat in the neighborhood. And thank you, Ben, for your advocacy, and thank you, everyone. Let's open it up.
Can I see the hands up? So we're going to start with the young lady with the blonde hair and the gray sweater. Liz Patrick from the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
I was hoping to follow up on your e-bike initiative, if I could.
Please.
In our neighborhood surveys of e-bike delivery safety practices, we have found that only 30% of restaurants actually get it right. No e-bikes, and they're wearing vests with proper identification, the name of the restaurant, the rider ID. After each survey, we follow very closely with the 19th precinct, and we report all of the e-bike violators that we've seen and the restaurants who are using that mode. Ben and DOT also conduct safety training for anyone who's interested, but unfortunately it's voluntary. So we're hoping that we can go a step further. The NYPD, if we as residents can identify which restaurants are in fact breaking the rules, I'm not sure we'll ever get compliance above 30%.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. And reminder to my whole team here, when you hear your topic, step forward. So we have had this conversation about the focus on enforcement. I know the inspector feels and believes in that very deeply. I think this is a great question. Inspector, if you see an e-bike out there, our enforcement's going to get it, but if it's unclear which business it's working with, what can we do?
If you do see an e-bike out, what we do at a community council meeting, usually some of the attendees at the meeting will give us an address for the location, especially with the new law that's in place right now. We have since visited some of those locations and explained to them what the rules are with the e-bike that they are now getting. This.
Well, I'm sorry to jump in. Would you say, generally speaking, the NYPD can figure out the location that each e-bike is coming from?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I have confidence they will find the NYPD always finds their man or their woman or their restaurant. So yes, They will follow up, but it's an excellent point because we want this enforcement to be pervasive, and if people think they can evade it, you're right, it will not make things safe. I am very certain they'll be able to get to the root cause in each case. Thank you.
I just want to thank the 19th Precinct and the 17th Precinct because I believe 10% of all e-bike enforcement in the city of New York happens here, and we do not represent 10% of the population. So thank you. I have Jennifer Reddall from the Church of the Epiphany.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. I'm Jennifer Reddall. I'm the rector of the Church of the Epiphany on 74th and York, where right now, as we're sitting here, we're feeding dinner to 120 hungry and homeless New Yorkers, many of whom live in this district.
Excellent. Thank you.
And my question is about the Emergency Food Assistance Program, EFAP, which we rely upon for our soup kitchen and many of the other local soup kitchens rely upon as well. Can you guarantee that we're not going to be cutting funding to that and to other programs for the people who are most on the margins for
So it's been
hunger?
4 years to judge by, so this is not theory. There's never been a time, Commissioner Banks is an expert on this topic for a long time, there's never been a time when soup kitchens and food pantries needed food and we didn't have money in the budget for it. The council accounts for some, we account for some, but we just never let it run out. That's the bottom line. We will make sure the money is there. Thank you.
Rachel Levy from Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for being here. A big question that we have in our organization is overdevelopment. You touched on it a little bit already with the recent success in the East River 50s area. But I'd like to ask you another question. Our work has shown that many of the out-of-scale towers that are popping up in our neighborhood are the result of zoning loopholes that developers are using to boost height in their buildings. Things like the lack of regulation over the mechanical exemption, floor-to-floor heights, which are not regulated in our community, in an entire city, indeed, in the zoning resolution. And we believe that these loopholes are really undermining both the purpose and the intent of the zoning resolution and allowing these out-of-scale buildings to pop up in residential neighborhoods across the city and especially on the Upper East Side. So I'd like to ask kind of your thoughts on that. What do you think about these loopholes on the Upper East Side in particular? We have a building right now on 62nd Street that we have challenged to the DOB that we're waiting for a response on that has a 100-foot floor-to-floor void in the middle of the building that we see has no other logical purpose other than to boost the height of that tower. So we see buildings popping up that are hundreds of feet taller than they would be without these. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, I want to thank you because you've done by bringing up this issue. It helped us focus on. We have a whole big city to deal with, but I want to emphasize that the voice of a single community organization or a single resident can often wake us up to a specific challenge or idea. So this was a very helpful point. So I have brought to you the chair of the City Planning Commission, Marissa Lago, who will speak to it.
I want to thank you and also Councilmember Kalos for bringing this issue, shining the light on it. And we agree that the notion that there are empty spaces for the sole purpose of making the building taller for the views at the top is not what was intended. And so we are already working under the mayor's direction with the Department of Buildings to see how we can make sure that the intent of the rules is followed. So thank you.
There's a young lady in Salmon who happens to be a teacher at PS 290, and I think she may have some students. They've introduced legislation with my office, and so.
Hello. Hello, youth legislators.
Mayor de Blasio. Jesse and Ava were in my kindergarten in 2014, and we're studying about the foods in our lunchroom, and in the process we learned about pesticides, toxic pesticides, and how foods are grown. And we were lucky enough to meet up with our council member, Ben Kalos, who was in our school. He invited us to City Hall, and we went there, and he asked us if there was any way we he could help us. And they said,
ban toxic pesticides.
and so he said they wanted a bill, they wanted a law.
Can we have him say that again a little louder?
Ban toxic pesticides.
Use only nature's
Pesticides.
Pass a law. So that's what they told him in 2014. And he looked at them and he said, I promise I will try. In 2015, he introduced a bill called Intro 0800. It would ban toxic pesticide use in New York City parks and public spaces. Pesticides like glyphosate, Roundup, which are known to be really, really dangerous, especially to children. So that bill is, it's going to be reintroduced, and a team of scientists and experts are working with Councilman Kalos to make the bill even better. And we want this bill passed, and we hope that you will work with our team of children and adults to get the bill passed into law.
Well,
and we've even come to a signing ceremony if you.
That's good.
Like
Okay. It's Jesse and
Jesse and Ava.
And Ava? Okay, Jesse, Ava, thank you so much. You're very good citizens. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. I see you start them young here in the neighborhood. That's very impressive. I don't know the details of what you proposed. I am sympathetic. And what I would say to members of my team who work on legislation, and you know who you are out there in the sound of my voice, that I'd like to see directly what's going on with this legislation and see how we can, I mean, obviously the name speaks for itself because toxic pesticides are not our ideal, we can say that, and so we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to address it. So I'll ask my team to brief me on the legislation and see how we can work with the council member.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Tricia Shimamura, Community Board 8 Waterfronts Chair.
Hi, Mr. Mayor,
Hi.
and now Parks Chair with Barry Schneider.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Although I appreciate and I applaud the $100 million that are going to expand our Esplanade, that money does nothing to actually address the problems that are on the current Esplanade. And the money that you guys have put into that have invested only does the bare minimum repairs. By your engineers' accounts themselves, they're saying that those repairs will only last about 5 to 10 years, if that. We need additional funding to take care of the Esplanade that we have so that we have it longer and we don't have these same conversations in 5 to 10 years. I'm asking if there's anything that can be done to provide additional funding so that we have longer lasting repairs, because right now everything that's being planned is truly a Band-Aid to a much larger problem.
Well, let me separate that. Who's got it? Look, I appreciate it, and I can tell it's a passionate concern. This is a little bit the story of New York City, to be clear, that we are grappling with trying to keep a lot of infrastructure together while trying to add where we can add. So there's always a balancing act. I think it's fair to say that it's a major priority for us to try and unite this whole Esplanade around Manhattan. Of course, we have to protect that, which we have. We're going to try and do that year by year in a conscientious fashion. We are starting a new budget process. We budget out years ahead. We can look at what it's going to take to make sure we're always ahead of the game in terms of repairs. But I want to be straightforward. I mean, I pride myself after 51 town hall meetings. I try not to placate if I may have a difference of opinion. Of course, we want to keep it in as good repair we can, but we also have to serve the areas that are not yet served at all. So that's the balancing act. But just to say this, we will be having an upcoming budget process, and you can tell me, I assume Parks is putting in a state of good repair budget for that part of the Esplanade.
Yes, that's correct. And we have, below 90th Street, we have about 5 projects, capital projects, scheduled or in construction, working with Councilmember Kalos and the Mayor's office. Some of them are already under construction, others are entering design. North of 90th Street, up to 125th Street, we have 5 other projects that will be approximately $40 million that the mayor's put in for the budget to make that be a total renovation. And it is not 5 or 10 years. I understand the confusion. they go 20 years or more, and I'll explain that to you when we meet over the next few days. And that actually is longer than the 20 years. It goes, what that means is they have to come back occasionally and add wrapping around some of the other piers, and that will extend the life even well beyond 20 years to 40 years or 50 years. But I understand the confusion. We'll be able to get back to you.
Thank you very much.
In the back, in I believe leopard print.
Mayor de Blasio, your office and the Department of Education have been working diligently to make its wonderful New York City public school education more accessible on many fronts. One of its great programs is to promote and strive for inclusivity and diversity. On that front, the Department of Education has approved diversity initiative programs at various schools, including the newest program at Public School 77 Lower Lab, located on 96th and 3rd Avenue. As you know, real estate development has been growing at record pace. Thus, space and seats at schools such as PS 77 has become an issue. The schools want to be able to carry out these diversity programs sanctioned by your office and the DOE. Can you provide guidance regarding the space issue? We already have 33 children in one classroom.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, first of all. I appreciate and can tell it is very heartfelt, your belief in doing all we can to continue to diversify our classrooms. And a lot of that, you're right, comes down to school by school visions that help us to achieve that. Again, in the interest of honesty and straightforwardness, space is an issue all over the school system and all over the city. But you make a really interesting and helpful point. We have to be careful if we're trying to do a diversity effort that needs additional space, not to kind of have competing visions bang into each other. At this particular school, one, can we protect the space it has? Two, do we have any ability to do any addition?
Well, at this particular school...
I'm sorry, introduce yourself, Lorraine.
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Lorraine Grillo. I'm president of the School Construction Authority. And I know this particular school, and I don't think that there is any possible room for an addition on this space, but we can certainly sit down and talk about maybe some other possibilities along the way. So we'll be happy to do that.
In the front row, we have Michelle Birnbaum, who is a block out of my district, but we will give you a pass.
That's right. That's very generous, Ben. You're still a New Yorker to me.
I'm still a New Yorker, right. So thank you for taking my question, both of you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership with respect to the street vendor legislation, Intro 1303, recognizing that it fell sorely short in addressing community concerns about the effect of street vending on the quality of life of our residents and businesses. Many of us have worked very hard for many years on this issue and have ideas and CB resolutions that would improve on current conditions and respect the hard work of street vendors. The issue of siting and location, which was not previously addressed, must be addressed in any upcoming legislation. Will you support that? And can we be assured of a seat at the table during the drafting of any new legislation?
So great minds think alike. I was, as many of my team members will attest, I kept adamantly saying, I know the council acted in goodwill to try and come up with this legislation. I kept saying more times I could count, we have to take the geographical question into account. We have to address the fact that, especially in a time when retail is under such stress, in my opinion, it is a mistake to create additional stress and additional competition. And we need some kind of sensible geographical restrictions. That does not mean vendors don't have an opportunity to thrive. It's about balance. And by the way, if the goal was to increase the number of vendor licenses, then we needed those ground rules and we needed stronger enforcement. It only worked if all the pieces were in. So that is part of why I could not support the legislation, because it didn't have those geographical restrictions. So yes, I can't support anything unless it's in there. There's a new process beginning, and that will be my clear position as we begin the process. Of course, my team is happy to hear from you. In terms of the drafting process, I can't tell people you'll sit at the table while we draft, but we can, because it's starting anew, my team will make sure to follow up with you and sit down with you at the beginning of the process to see what your ideas are. Thank you.
Thank you. call on a young lady who declined my walk home and an escort home last night, Rita Popper.
You're supposed to say nothing personal, Ben.
Nothing. It wasn't personal.
That's right.
I ended up walking alone.
There you go.
Mr. Mayor, homeless children are a problem. And I know of a group of teenagers who started something called Caring Kids. And they reached out to the first homeless Girl Scout troop. I know that your wife is involved with it.
Yes.
And that first troop lived in the sleep-in right over the 59th Street Bridge.
Okay.
However, now seeing their life is that there's no consistency, that we have, you know, they're here this month, they get moved to another place in another month. We need to break the cycle of homelessness. And I am asking you if you would please try to make the infills in the NYCHA developments 100% affordable in perpetuity. That way we can start moving these families in and sending these kids to a consistent school.
Okay, thank you. Several pieces there. Thank you, and I appreciate the question very much. The Girl Scout troop, I just want to start on this, which was started in a homeless shelter, now has grown and reaching a lot of other girls all over the city who, you know, God forbid, have ended up in homelessness, is an incredibly life-affirming reality of people addressing this adversity in a very positive way, and I would urge everyone, it's a wonderful cause to get involved in. To your core point, look, homelessness is a crisis. It is painful to me. I'm someone who worked on it years before as a legislator. I'm astounded at what we're facing. I don't think anyone foresaw it becoming like this, where it's so much of the time now in terms of shelter, working people ending up in shelter. I mean, it's an inconceivable idea, but it's all about the cost of housing and the fact that, bluntly, wages and benefits have not risen at all consistent with the cost of housing. Our job is still, nonetheless, to constantly find solutions. We've gotten tens of thousands of people out of shelter and into permanent housing, but many of them, immediately the bed is filled by someone else who became homeless. If there is a silver lining, it is that in the process of trying to find new solutions, we recognized a 3-decade mistake, which is exactly what you said, homeless people being moved all over. Our plan now, which is being implemented very assertively, is, God forbid anyone's homeless, that you make sure they stay as close to their home area as possible. First and foremost, stay in their own borough, and then hopefully as close to their own neighborhood as possible, because that connects them to family, friends, houses of worship, work sites, schools especially. So the entire system is being reworked to focus on that geographical proximity. And that is a very good thing. In terms of the NYCHA land, look, there will be development in select sites, and I want to be honest with you, some will be 100% affordable, although we intend to ensure that that's part of our larger affordable housing program, not just for folks who have been homeless. Other sites will be 50% affordable and 50% market for a reason, because we need money from those sites to go back into fixing the problems of NYCHA, which are vast. At this point, well over $18 billion in physical needs in NYCHA that we don't have money for. So I really do hear the point, but we are trying to strike a balance. We have to address homelessness, but we also have to fix public housing, and that's how we're trying to strike that balance. Thank you. Jocelyn.
Sir in the front row.
Thank you.
Okay, the most serious problem in our democracy is the lack of accountability over the judiciary branch. Everybody in this room should take cover, because according to 3 judicial jerks, I made thinly veiled threats in the idiom used by the perpetrator of the Fort Hood massacre, where he killed 13 soldiers and wounded 32, and the judges also hallucinated.
Sir, do you have a question?
Yes. Why are you ignoring the problem of accountability over the judiciary branch of the government based on the absurd decision of Stumpy Sparkman, where the judge sterilized a 15-year-old girl by tubal ligation?
Okay, thank you. Look, we take very seriously in terms of the judiciary that the city controls. I interview the people that I name to judicial seats, and we do a lot of very, very rigorous selection, and then we watch very carefully what they do in terms of the quality of their work. I can't speak to the state and federal level. State, I'll always pass that to Liz Kruger, and the federal level confuses me entirely at this point in history. Go ahead, Ben.
I see Lorraine Johnson, who is an active member of Community Board 8.
You get a microphone. There you go.
Thank you very much for allowing me to ask my question.
You get the microphone a little closer. There you go.
I would like to address this to anybody that can help me figure out why NYCHA doesn't have any heat. I haven't had heat since last Wednesday, and it's a real problem.
Right.
And my building, I live at Stanley Isaacs at 1830, and there's a problem within the whole 5 buildings, but in my apartment, I haven't had any heat since last Wednesday. And I'm really upset about it. I called all kinds of numbers. Put a complaint into 311. They told me they can get back with me in 2 weeks. So this is a serious problem. Can anybody help me?
Yeah, thank you very much for raising it. And okay, so hold on one second. I'll introduce you to her in a second. But first of all, no one should ever tell you we'll get back to you in 2 weeks. That's unacceptable. And I want to figure out, I have the chair of the Housing Authority with me here. I want to obviously track back how that could have happened, because that's never something we would tell one of our residents or any citizen of this city. It's a very tough situation. I'm very sorry you went through that. We want to fix it right away. The overall reality of the public housing, which we have to find every conceivable way to address, is a lot of buildings with boilers, many decades old and often way past their useful time, that we do not have enough money to constantly update the way we should. We are putting hundreds of millions of dollars into new boilers and boiler repairs, but we gotta just keep trying to find a way to do more. But the goal is to stop any heating problem before it happens, or if it happens, to turn it around in a matter of hours. I'm very sorry for what you experienced. We need to fix that. The gentleman right there is in charge of all heating services for NYCHA. He will follow up with you directly to get the heat back on in your apartment. Thank you.
I see Jordan Wook, who is actually is on the MTA billboards in the 2nd Avenue subway.
Good evening, Mayor.
How are you?
I'm actually very fine. I hope you are too.
Thank you.
You're probably aware of the digital divide, which occurs between the rich and the poor and is getting only worse. Now, recently, the city put in place a program, Link NYC, which was going to bring free Wi-Fi to the city. Community Board 8 has some of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city, if not the country, but in one corner, we have 2 NYCHA housing complexes. And based upon the plan, the rollout will be completed in another 4 or so years, but it will not go to NYCHA. NYCHA is being handled differently, and they probably won't get it for another maybe 10 years. And so if I were running the zoo, I would have the poor people get the free Wi-Fi first, and then provide it for the rest of the community. I guess that was a question.
Yeah. That was an opinion as question. Look, I don't think there is a contradiction here. We want to do both. We aggressively want to reach public housing, and we also believe there has to be more accessibility for everyday New Yorkers. It's amazing how many people do not have access to high-speed internet. It is quintessential to being able to exist in modern society, to find jobs and opportunity. So we're trying to do it on both levels. And I think some of the street efforts are easier and cheaper than rewiring a whole development, but we're going to keep doing both. So I think we agree with the spirit of what you're saying, but I want to, just on the NYCHA side of the equation, Shola, you missed your cue. Okay. Just because I think it'd be helpful to hear what we're trying to do sort of timeline-wise in terms of spreading access in NYCHA. I think you should use the Queensbridge example as one for it, which Queensbridge houses is the single biggest public housing development in America. And that's one of the first places we focused.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for your question. So as the mayor and my colleagues, bringing broadband to New Yorkers who don't have it has been a major focus of this administration. We've led with the work at Queensbridge and several other developments to actually wire our buildings. But we recognize that it is expensive in some ways to do that. So we've been partnering with community partners that can help do things like wireless mesh networks in certain communities, which are sort of more innovative ways to bring Wi-Fi to communities. 1, 2, we now have in all of our management offices have installed customer kiosks that also provide Wi-Fi where residents can scan and surf the internet if necessary. NYCHA also has 5 digital vans, which also sort of make the rounds throughout the development that offer free access to digital services where people can do homework and do job preparation. So we're trying a number of different tools and ways, strategies to provide access to residents, and clearly more investment on this issue is necessary, and we continue to work with the city and the council member on that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Come on, Ben, choose someone.
In the brown sweater.
Hi there. I wanted to first thank Mayor de Blasio and Councilmember Kalos for having us all here. And there are a number of people from my neighborhood and building. About a year ago, a number of us attended the community council meetings for the 17th precinct, led by Deputy Inspector Nicole Papa-Michael, who's right over there and has been a huge advocate for us. She took notice of the fact that our bridge on-ramp intersection for the 59th Street Bridge at 57th Street between 1st and 2nd Avenues is treacherous, to say the least. At any given moment, when the walk signal turns walk, you have maybe 5 seconds to cross before you're cut off by any number of vehicles, including buses, trucks. We understand that people want to get over the bridge, but given the number of elderly in our neighborhood and the number of young families, it's terrifying. We obtained some statistics that explained that the number of collisions with injuries had gone up 4-fold in the past 3 years. And Inspector Papa-Michael took notice. She sent officers to do traffic surveys because the officers who are there with the yellow vests are not able to issue summonses. One of my neighbors organized a Ben in the Building meeting with Councilmember Kalos, who was incredibly helpful. And Deputy Inspector Papa-Michael put us in touch with Margaret Forgione of the DOT and her commissioner, Luis Sanchez. There you are. Thank you. And him and his team came to our building last week and had a meeting. A number of us put together I am getting to a question.
I know it's in there.
It's riveting, right? I'm keeping you on the edge of your seats. It's truly terrifying. We put together a PDF and a video, which I would send anyone. It's really a really frightening intersection. And when the weather is bad or there's an ice skating rink in front because the puddle has frozen, it's even worse. So we very much appreciate your support and the support you've given Inspector Papa-Michael and the authority to Mr. Sanchez to help us.
Our question is?
We ultimately want to get a red light camera installed. And there are a number of measures that Mr. Sanchez is taking to help. We know that perhaps Ms. Kruger can help us with this, Senator Kruger, but we've been told that for some reason Albany
Okay, I got you. I got you.
How can we navigate?
I will give you the once over. So First of all, I have had this conversation on numerous occasions with Inspector Papa Michael, who's been on the case. Let's thank her for that. She's been all over it. So she has definitely made me aware of the challenge, and I know the precinct has been doing more enforcement as one piece of the equation. Commissioner Trottenberg can talk about other things we could do, and I think, I am sure some people will be distressed, but I think we do need to look at the signal timing and see if pedestrians are being given that little time. That worries me, and we need to analyze that specifically. The camera issue is real simple. It makes no sense in the world that it needs approval in Albany. This is, I put this in the bucket of I always call it neo-colonial aspects of the New York State Constitution that require a city of 8.5 million people to go to Albany for the most small everyday matters, but it is true. We cannot put in a speed camera without Albany, and it's been very, very difficult to get them out of Albany. The only place we've succeeded is the ones around schools, and not anywhere near as many as we want. Certainly it's worth a try, but I think it is more about what NYPD can do to enforce, and they're very focused, and then what DOT can do with other elements of the situation. Take it away.
And I will say, Alex, yes, I have talked to Margaret and Lewis. They briefed me on their meetings with you all, and we are going to take a look at signal timing and improving crosswalks and see if there are some things we can do there. We thank you for hearing your concerns on it. The red light camera question is a bigger one, obviously having to do with Albany. And, one thing, we have a limited number of red light cameras in the city. We can move them. And I think one thing we want to do is do an analysis of what's happening at that intersection and decide if that's really the most important solution. If it is, then we can consider, it's not an easy process to move one of the cameras, but if we think that's the best thing to do, we can take a look at that as well.
So we've been joined by somebody very important, very special. There are two elected officials who are my role models. It's part of why I get in so much trouble. And they are State Senator Liz Krueger, and we've just been joined by our Manhattan Borough President, Gail Brewer. This is her fourth night.
Thank you very much, Ben Kalos. You are very well represented by him, and I served with the mayor, with Mayor Dinkins, and in the city council, and he did a good job then, and he's doing an okay job now. I'm one of the conscience types, But I'm here because I was in the council for 12 years, and I have a big appreciation for the community board, for David Getz, who's the principal here, who's really a rock star. Where's David Getz? I don't know if he's here. But the schools in Ben's district and Liz's and mine are really excellent. I think the message that I'd like to convey is I just actually come from a meeting with all the faith-based trying to figure out how to deal with the homeless. And I have to say, in this community in particular, the faith-based community is extraordinary, often housing people overnight, trying to make sure that they are cared for. And this community in particular has done that for a long time. So I'm here to listen, to be supportive. I think a lot of the quality of life issues, do not bring up bicycles with me right now. I know the issue. I am aware of it. But more importantly, we'll keep working with NYPD, DOT on the issues and quality of life that we all care about. I also want to say that the commanders of NYPD in this district, I see the 1-9 over there, are wonderful. Congratulations.
I would just like to thank that we have the 2-3 here as well for the portion of East Harlem that I represent. So I want to thank them. Do we have the 114 here as well? Thank you very much. They represent Roosevelt Island. I'd like to Andrew Fine from the East 86th Street Neighborhood Association, who comes to every single brainstorm with Ben every month.
Wow, that is commitment.
Spends more time with me than my wife.
There you go.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for making yourself available to the community. And also thank you for standing up for progressive values, both locally and nationally.
Thank you for that.
I'd like to point out just that we have a wonderful community here, an exceptional council member, Ben Kalos. And again, with the 19th Precinct, your Inspector McPherson is doing a bang-up job here.
Thank you.
That being said, we're not a community without issues. Whether it's sanitation, which is one question that I was going to ask about, we need a lot of help.
But what's your favorite question?
Well, building height is second. But what I'm here to ask about tonight is the East 86th Street and Lexington Avenue subway station turns 100 on July 17th of this year.
I did not know that. Okay.
It is in desperate need of modernization.
Okay.
But it also happens to be the 10th most traveled subway station in the system. Number 1 through 9 are all accessible to the disabled. The first one on your list to add elevators to and make accessible to both the local and the express levels should be the East 86th Street and Lexington Avenue subway station. And I ask you to please do so.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, I want to speak to this issue, but first I want to do a survey of the room, all interested, active citizens. So you have two choices in this survey, the City of New York and the State of New York. The question is, who controls the MTA? Raise your hand. If you think city, raise your hand. If you think state, raise your hand. You are exceptionally accurate, people who just raise your hand for the state. That is not a cop-out. It is a reality that needs to be part of how we solve the problem. The MTA, and I think this is bluntly a very kind of sad and somewhat cynical reality of our history, the MTA was created to confuse people as to who was in charge of the subways. It was literally created so that there would be an inability to figure it out. But what happened over time was it became clearer and clearer. The governor appoints the head of the MTA, the governor determines the budget for the MTA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I have appointees, but not a majority. Polly Trottenberg, our transportation commissioner, is one of my appointees. We work well with the MTA on things like select bus service, which we do together. That's been a really good thing. There's other areas where we have real disagreements with the MTA. So what I am hoping will happen, and I think this is a crucial year, is because it is finally clearer and clearer to the people of the city and to the media that the state controls the MTA, it will actually force the hand of Albany to come up with a solution. And I personally, some of you may know, I believe the solution is a millionaire's tax. I think it is the single best way. But there are other ideas out there, and I would say a statement that's kind of agnostic. I have my preferences, others have theirs. But at the end of this Albany session, my fervent hope is there will be a plan in place for the long-term financing of the MTA. That's what we all need, and that's what we should fight for. In the meantime, in terms of specific choices, we can go and advocate. We don't get to choose, but we can advocate. So, Commissioner.
No, and I would only add, I think the disability community, for those of you who follow the MTA, they have been making a very powerful case. The MTA has fallen very behind in upgrading stations for accessibility. And Accessoride, another area where we hear a lot of concern. So have now been formed two special commissions comprising MTA board members, which are calling in experts and happy to talk to anyone who wants to come participate, frankly, to kind of put some more pressure on the MTA and work with them to see if they can improve their accessibility for stations and Accessoride.
The Commissioner will follow up at the MTA meetings on 86th Street and Lex.
Young man in back with the local 79 jacket, full disclosure, I once represented them as an attorney.
Okay, I appreciate a good full disclosure.
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Ben Kalos, on passing that safety bill, Intro 1447.
Yes.
For those that may not know, a lot of construction workers was dying in the past 2 years, but these gentlemen played the essential role, so give it up for them to save some lives.
Thank you.
My question is, I just need some clarity, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I guess you could refer to the SCA President Director, leaseback and building schools, developers building schools in the traditional sense, getting public funds, but are not paying prevailing wage because of the term leaseback. So how are they able to operate, get funds from the public, but not pay the construction workers a prevailing wage? We all aware of Davis-Bacon, and how are they able to basically do that?
So I just want to, it's a very good and fair question, and Lorraine Grillo will answer it. I want a clarifying point as we do. In terms of some of the school development that goes with market development, I thought that was packaged in, that there's not a public subsidy, but it's packaged into the overall.
In some cases it is, but there are those
other cases where
we do.
subsidy.
But
Okay.
anything that takes our capital money requires that they pay prevailing wage. So if there's a specific case,
Hold on.
if there's a specific case, I'd be happy to talk to you about it.
Okay, so I want, again, sometimes this is me learning on the job and also making sure everyone is clear. Where there is an arrangement to build a school where no money changes hands, in effect, where we do not put in a subsidy, that's one scenario. That's right. Where we do put in a subsidy, Davis-Bacon is activated.
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you follow up with President afterwards? Because I want you guys to see the specifics, but that's the policy answer. Okay. Thank you.
Cospag-Naletti.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a fellow paisano, I'm going to keep my question short, and I hope your answer will be
Grazie mille.
East 79th Street, last year in the middle of the night, and thank you for the SBS. However, the traffic on 79th went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes of traffic. We cannot offload and load because we get asked to move. Can we, and also the DOT has come to the CBA meeting and they said, we won't do anything for 12 months. Can we get something back to 4 lanes of traffic? The traffic now gets backed up for 4 or 5 blocks.
So let me ask 2 questions. Wait, leave the microphone, thank you. 2 questions. First of all, just my personal curiosity. So you're of Italian heritage, but that sounds like an Australian accent.
You are correct.
All right. You're a member of the diaspora in Australia. Very nice. When you say offload, are you saying for a residence or for a business?
For residents.
For residents. Okay, so Commissioner.
Oh, by the way, also at a CBA meeting, the police or the traffic was asked to kind of lay off. However, I'm not sure if that's happening.
Okay, so let's talk about this. This is kind of a classic New York dynamic, and the Commissioner and I have been to 51 town hall meetings together, and we try to level with people about this. When we put select bus service in, it is far from perfect. By definition, it takes up space to be able to work, right? The notion that you can have much faster bus service is predicated on the availability of those lanes. There are different ways to configure it. The Commissioner can talk about that, and honestly, it's always a work in progress in the sense that we look what happens and we can make adjustments. But the core notion, select bus service, depends on having that right away. Therefore, the buses move faster. Therefore, more people take the buses, and it's another reason that people are not in their cars, and that frees up the streets, and obviously is better for the environment, et cetera. The question always is, have we adjusted it right for each community as best we can? And the enforcement issue, and Commissioner, let's speak to this, the difference between someone who has left their car in the lane versus someone who's unloading the groceries or helping their kids out of the car. Help us understand that, and if we need PD, we can bring them into.
Right, and obviously one of the biggest transportation challenges we have in the city, you all know it well in this neighborhood, is crosstown travel. You know, we found a point a couple of years ago, there's a group that puts out a well-known report called the Pokey Report that points out that there are many crosstown bus routes where you can walk faster than you can ride the bus. So select bus service is trying to solve that problem. And as the mayor says, it is a challenge. It is a challenge on the crosstown streets to keep the bus moving, to ensure that you have parking and loading, and you can keep traffic moving as well, and to do it safely. If you're seeing big problems there, we are happy to come back and make adjustments where we can. We have seen the good news with select bus service is travel speeds really do improve 10 to 30%, and ridership goes up. But I think as the mayor said, it is a balancing act on each of the roadways. You are allowed where the bus lane is to quickly drop off and pick up. Accessoride can use the lanes. You can't just leave your car there, though. That's the enforcement piece.
So you're on 79th. Who's got 79th? Okay, so let's do a real life test. So Inspector, in terms of how you instruct your officers, do you think it's clear to them that if someone's doing a brief drop off, that's not how we want to enforce? Or do you think this is an area we need to do more on?
Each officer is trained to use discretion. So if someone's dropping off, unloading groceries, unloading a child, they're going to use their discretion and give you the time. That's what they should do. And if they're not, that's something that we will address.
And just so I can interpret a little the word, when we say use discretion, it means they do not have to give a ticket.
Correct.
They have a right to judge the situation and say, okay, so long as you move along quickly, we'll just let it go. Thank you.
I want to make sure we get to a Roosevelt Islander, the chair of the Roosevelt Island Committee, Lindstrom Shinazaki.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for taking my question. On Roosevelt Island, Kohler Hospital sits on city property. What we want to know is, are you going to protect the hospital? Is it going to be repopulated? And will that be an area for those in need and who have the worst situations? Will we be able to continue to maintain them in our safe community? We see what looks like they're moving toward closing that hospital. And where will those people go? And will you be able to put them in a neighborhood as safe as ours?
Thank you very much for the question. It's a compassionate question. I appreciate that a lot. Look, first of all, anything we do in terms of serving people through our public health system, we obviously are, the whole idea of the public health system is to help people in need and make sure they get the care they need, wherever that is. So if there's anybody that for any reason we needed to accommodate in another facility, of course we're going to do that. And it would be someplace we feel is good and appropriate and safe. We have to now figure out what we're going to do with the future of our public health system. We've got some of our premier facilities that I've made very clear we're going to, in many cases, repurpose, but we have a lot of different uses for them. As we look at the whole system, we have to make sense of it going forward because, bluntly, this system has been very close to bankruptcy more than once in the last few years. So we got to give that some thought. We're going to meet with the community and talk about it and talk about different things that we could think about. But there's no question, whatever we do in any case, we do protect the interests of the patient. That's the whole reason it's there. Thank you.
We have a young lady with red hair and a red sweater in the second row.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm here to ask, how can we get action to close the gaps in the protected bicycle lane on 2nd Avenue? The dangerous gaps are in the heart of Manhattan, some around 59th Street Bridge, and the 2nd Avenue protected bicycle lane is a crucial part of the Safe Streets network, in particular the East Side corridor connecting Brooklyn with the Bronx. So
I know this is one of our more challenging issues. Obviously, we've done a lot of bike lane expansion. We've put in a lot of protected bike lanes. That's been an important part of Vision Zero, and we believe in it. We're going to keep doing it. This one's a little challenging logistically. Take it away, Commissioner.
You are correct, Mr. Mayor. It's no secret that this stretch of 2nd Avenue has been very, very challenging. And I have just written here the latest on what we're trying to do. So 52nd up to 59th now has had a protected bike lane since last summer. 59th to 68th, we are looking at an off-peak protected bike lane, and we're going to be reporting back to the community on that in March. 43rd up to 52nd, we now have, something we're trying that's new, which is the protected off-peak bike lane. We're seeing how that works. And we're going to continue, I think, to build out and strengthen. There's no question, it's a challenging stretch of roadway. We're committed to trying to bring as much as we can in terms of protected bike infrastructure. So we will continue to work with you, and we'll be back in March on that first stretch.
We're going to stay in this same section. There's a young lady, Betty Cooper Wallerstein, who's been leading the East 79th Street Neighborhood Association longer than I have been alive. A legend in her own right.
Obviously, I can't be too young if I've been there all this time. Thank you very much, Council Member, for arranging this, and thank you, our Mayor. Sadly, and you know that I'm very much active with the the super talls, but since that's addressed and our wonderful Borough President has arranged for a meeting, I will use a different question. Sadly, we have a tale of two cities right here on the Upper East Side's Community Board 8 district. Just recovering from the flu. Although there are thousands of people who daily work on 5th Avenue, from 60th Street to 110th Street, at the very large hospital centers and medical offices, the very many schools and museums, and also the businesses on nearby Madison Avenue, there is yet not one bus shelter or bench along that long and busy stretch of the 60th to 110th Street. Although Community Boards 8 and 11 have been hearing this issue, sympathetic to it, I've personally been working to try to get this accomplished for the last 3 years, a little more than 3 years, and no action has happened. So I'm hoping that you can please correct this inequity that exists in our district. Thank you.
And tell me again, you're saying from 60th up to
110th.
along
And
5th
that's-
and Madison?
Yes, and it's along Central Park. And that has been one of the issues. There was one explanation given because Council Member Garodnick arranged a very nice meeting in his office with the DOT, with the Conservancy, and they were understanding but unable to really say that they could do anything at that point. And one of the things that came up was that it is Central Park and it is a landmark, and that there really are no commercial activity. And I accepted that until all the bikes arrived along the wall. I have a daughter in the hospital at 106th and 5th, and when I come out, I can take a cab, but I'm concerned about all those workers working all day who stand in the rain and the snow, and I think that we should have a bus shelter and a bench along that route.
So, Commissioner, in terms of, I'm going to be very careful not to commit to anything until we look at this, but bus shelter, bench, either, both, it's all equal, or are there any restrictions?
No, the bus shelter issue is a more complicated one. The city has had a big contract in which we worked out with a company to do bus shelters all over the city in exchange for advertising. We've now fulfilled all the elements of that contract. If we want to put in more bus shelters, that's first of all a budgetary question.
Right, but it wouldn't fit under the existing contract.
Correct. Okay. And there are places all over the city where there are interest in more bus shelters. There is, in addition to that, though, not so complicated for benches, but that does get into, as you've heard from the questioner, working with the Parks Department, because along the park you've got trees, you've got a lot of other things. So it's more challenging to install some of that street furniture.
And all that is capital?
Yes.
Okay. So look, what I try as a rule for town hall meetings, because you imagine, so there's 51 council districts. This is the 51st town hall meeting. I've done the whole cycle now. Now I'm going to go back and do it all again. And every community, there are good people like you get up and ask for something that has a financial ramification. So what I try to do scrupulously is say, now that you've told me directly, I'm going to have it assessed in the budget process. As you heard, there are some things where there may be actual physical barriers or legal barriers or other things, but the benches, we might be able to do something there. So I will guarantee you that it will be nominated. I cannot guarantee you it will happen. You will see the results in June, but I will guarantee you, based on your request, that we will nominate it and put it into the budget discussion. Thank you.
There's a young man in a USA hat in the second to last row.
Good evening. So we have a problem in my dad's job, and we want to fix that problem. So he works SWC West 33rd Street in front of the Madison Square Garden, and my dad, he'd been working there for like more than 20 years, and now they want to move us and put a newsstand, and we pay taxes.
What kind of business? I'm sorry to interrupt. What kind of business is it? Yeah, it can be a joint question. What kind of business is it?
A food vendor.
Food vendor, okay. So, okay, you're good. It's like, it's all right. So, what is the? Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry. First of all, good evening. We work as a food vendor for over 20 years in that small place. It's right front of my square garden. All right.
Get close. I couldn't hear that. What do you need? Just tell me what you need.
What I need exactly. We got like a new stand, they want to put it in our spot. And this spot feeding over 15 family. It means about over 40 kids, like this young girl.
How long have you been at that spot?
For us, over 20 years.
At that spot?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Who does hold on one second. Who does newsstands? Is that you or you?
It's me.
Newsstand placement?
Yes.
Really?
Well, we license the newsstands. And
Okay,
we work
come up,
together.
come on, work together. Okay, so, Consumer Affairs, DOT, I don't know the details. You'll look into it. I am sympathetic. It's kind of another classic New York reality. If they've been there for 20 years, I'm sympathetic. And my question is there room for some creativity to not displace a business that's been there that long?
We need to look at it because you're saying you're a food vendor, right?
Yes.
So you have a permit and a license
Absolutely.
to operate.
Right. Yes.
So I'm happy to look at it. We'll look at, what's
Okay, so
possible.
Commissioner
Definitely.
Salas from Consumer Affairs regulates food vendors. So you two will follow up with them. But my point is, oftentimes when we look at these things a little more closely, there's a way to accommodate both needs that does not disrupt an existing small business. So let's see what we can do there. Okay, they'll follow up, sir. They'll follow up with you. Let them do it. Let them do it. Thank you.
We have two young ladies in the third row, this side of the room.
Hi, my name is Sophie Shear. I'm with Amanda Cavaliero. We're seniors at Eleanor Roosevelt High School on 76th between 1st and York Avenue.
Elro?
Elro, yes.
I'm in the know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sadie Wenger at your bill
Yes.
signing.
Yes.
We were inquiring, our school does not have a gym available,
Yes.
and because of that, student athletes like ourselves are forced to practice hours before school starts in the morning. Our coaches sometimes have to wake up at 4 a.m. just to get to our practices, and we have games canceled because of limited gym space. And it has been brought to our attention that there is construction on a formerly Hertz rental car space that's becoming a preschool. And we wanted to know that whether or not a gym space could be built there to accommodate not only Elro but other schools in the community.
Fascinating. Thank you very much, good citizens, for raising this. So to Lorraine, it's interesting, I had not thought of that concept before when we're doing an early childhood center, if it also opens up possibilities. So I'm making a bigger point first.
We actually did look
Do you
at
think
that.
about cross-fertilizing those two ideas?
Yes, we're
Okay.
actually looking at that right now to see if it's possible.
Okay, so she builds all the school buildings in New York City. So, and the pre-K center, she does it herself. We save a lot of money, she does it all herself. It's really good. Why, at the end, find Lorraine and follow up. I think you have a great idea there. Thank you.
Sure. On the end in the white shirt.
Thank you, Councilman, and thank you, Mayor. I'm surprised an hour into this, no one's brought up the Marine Transfer Station, so let me do it.
It was just a matter of time.
It, of course, was. That
Yes.
wasn't even what I was going to ask originally, but I think you very much know the many reasons why this community believes the East 91st Street Marine Transfer Station should never have been built. But with its schedule opening next year, as a community, we're very much in the dark right now as to how it's actually going to operate.
Mhm.
From what the truck routes are going to be, to what the design of the proposed northern entrance is going to be, to the type of trash and the number of trucks that are actually going to be operating. Not what was put into the environmental impact statement, but what's really looking at being operated at this point. And if this facility will really achieve the financial goals and the supposed equity goals that was originally used by the city to justify the project. And as much as we recognize the reality that this complex will likely begin to operate in the next year, what tangible and specific steps do you plan to take to help ensure that this facility becomes obsolete and unneeded and can be closed as soon as possible? And it will be the best waste of money we would ever see here.
I'll start, and Commissioner Garcia will pick it up from there. So first of all, I honestly can say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for asking that question. And the reason I say that is it's good to make sure we're giving people the answers, because I think there are real answers, and I'd much rather everyone hear them in common and we get clear together. Look, I've been very consistent about the fact that, one, I thought the plan was right to begin with. Two, we have reevaluated, just being real with you, so if you don't like it, that's okay, but you're not going to hear any breaking news tonight. I supported it. I looked at it repeatedly, continue to support it. We've asked those questions about cost efficiency and about options. We still believe, after a lot of analysis, it was the right thing to do. It's for no lack of very careful study by a lot of people who took it very seriously. What I do feel strongly is the community asked for any conceivable way to make the project better. That is where we together got to the notion of the second ramp. That's a big effort and it's a cost, but we believed it was the right thing to do for the community. In the meantime, I have said this to everyone involved adamantly. As the existing ramp is used, I want every safety precaution taken, physical measures, personnel, everything it takes. If there's ever something that's not working right, I'm really easy to find. I'm a couple of blocks away, and you guys are very good at protesting or raising your voices. So I don't mean that to be flip. I mean to say I have given the clearest instructions about making sure it's safe and making sure we move to the new ramp as quickly as possible. I have also asked a lot of questions about the number of trucks and how they will proceed, and I'm actually pleased with the answers because I think it is less than people fear because of the way it physically will work. This is where I segue to Commissioner Garcia to explain how the trucks will come in and how many can be accommodated, et cetera.
Certainly. So thank you for your question. Obviously, our goal is to be a very good neighbor when the Marine Transfer Station opens. I know that probably isn't what you want to hear, but what we know about in terms of the number of trucks that service your community is that on our highest day, which is a Tuesday in May, it'll be 63 trucks. And your lowest day is Wednesday in February, where there will only be 38 trucks. This can process...
Catherine, I'm sorry to interrupt. That's for the whole day.
For the whole day.
Right.
Of sanitation trucks. You obviously have peaks and valleys based on what you produce. We can process 30 trucks an hour through this facility. That is what it was designed to do. And there's room for us to move in and out of the facility. We have provided the community, the CAG, with the truck route, so they all assume that they start from the middle of their district, so the middle of Community Board 8, and then go from there on the closest truck route to the facility. And that's how each of it's designed. So either up or down, first or second, and across 86th Street and then north. Did I answer all of the pieces?
You did not, Catherine. I'm going to point to another one. Help people understand. So again, in a day, everyone, ma'am, I think you want to listen to these answers. They're important to everyone. One, let's go over again. In the entire day, minimum number of trucks, maximum number of trucks.
38, 64.
Okay, so 38 trucks in the course of the whole day, up to 64 in the course of the whole day. Now, the capacity of the ramp and the facility to take in how many trucks at once, because there's real concerns. My understanding, I wasn't here when the older facility existed, but that there was really bad backups and it was very inconvenient. There was a lot of smell and it messed up traffic. Help people visualize, understand how many trucks you can get on the ramp into the facility at any given time, how you're going to address making sure there is not an odor, all that kind of stuff.
Certainly. So we can have 17 trucks on the ramp. We can process 30 trucks a day. We are not allowed under our state permit to queue at all.
30 an hour. 30 an hour?
30 in an hour.
Okay, I think you said day. So wait, let's do that again. How many on the ramp?
17.
17 could be on the ramp at one given time, and 30 can be handled in an hour in the facility.
In the facility. We also are making significant safety improvements at the corner, which have also been reviewed by the CAG, who has hired Sam Schwartz to review it. And he's like, basically, we are putting every bell and whistle that DOT would recommend at this corner. We also will have a DSNY employee at that corner whenever we are operating to guide the trucks in. In terms of how the facility was designed
regarding odor is that there's negative air pressure within the building and there is odor suppressant within the building. So the concept is that there should not be odor in the community. We also committed to do air monitoring twice a year around the facility and looking at PM 2.5 because there had been concerns about any of the health impacts, even though there was no findings during either the environmental assessments that were done. So our intention is to make it so that we are very efficient, we will not have trucks on York Avenue, and that we will operate safely. And we currently have 2 facilities open that we literally have had no complaints about in terms of their operation.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.
So I think we have a follow-up question from Kelly Nimmo-Gunther, who is the leader of Pledge to Protect, and we're hoping for a follow-up question.
Stick around. You did good. Wait, get you a microphone. Hold on.
Thank you. I'm Kelly Nimmo-Gunther, president of Pledge to Protect, and I do sit on the CAG committee, as you're well aware. We are, as you're well aware, Commissioner Garcia, we sent you a letter 2 years ago, and we have been working with the CAG to try to get resolution around these issues. Air quality is a huge issue that we are very concerned about with the kids that are going to be in the playground. As you know, we have the facts. You've seen our report, Talking Trash. These kids around that facility breathe faster than us. Their lungs are still developing. And where your current proposal is around where you're going to be air monitoring are not anywhere that's related to these kids. That's just one concern. We have a list of concerns. And Mayor de Blasio, I am asking for your assistance. We are struggling 2 years into this negotiation of trying to mitigate the negative impact. We are still struggling as a community to get resolution, even some answers to the issues that we have outlined in our letter to you. There has been many turnover of resources in this city, people who come in and are not fresh with the issues. I've asked and I've met with your people, but we're struggling. I'm asking that we get a small group of people at least together and really just sit down. The community concerns are valid around safety,
and so
pedestrian safety. So I'm asking for you to focus on a small group.
So meet with the small group and get us an answer.
I'm going to, a friendly amendment. I want to ensure that there are answers to all outstanding questions. I think the fair way to do it, I'm going to ask you to host a meeting in the community and to invite people from whatever combination of groups. The commissioner will come with her team and work through the issues point by point. I understand, I know the concerns are heartfelt. I want to remind people of what you just heard about the actual volume and the fact that the trucks, there's very few trucks at any given point in proximity to where kids are, and the fact that they can take so many trucks into the facility and move them quickly and get them out of there. I understand, I'm a parent too, I get why any parent would be protective and want real answers. But I also think the original assumptions, which I understand, were of a vast number of trucks, of something that resembled what happened in the past. This is a very different reality because of technology, because of the way the routes have been changed, everything. I think we owe it to the community to show you very visually, very specifically how that's going to go. And I think you'll see that the exposure kids have to any of the emissions from the truck is very limited, especially in the context of the city overall and life in this city.
Well, and just a clarified question, you were talking about DSNY trucks, right? In addition to that, is that correct? In addition to that, there'll be the private haulers. So
but again, I'm going to cut you off respectfully because we don't do a lot of back and forth. We want to do a process. Ben will call a meeting. The commissioner will come with her team. Your office will organize the list of all the agenda items, and we will keep working them through.
And so I want to thank the mayor because it is 9 o'clock.
I'll go to 9:15.
I appreciate the extra 15 minutes. We're going to go to a speed round, so we're going to cut questions down to like 10 seconds if possible. The mayor does this during the budget negotiations with the city council. Gentleman with his hand right up in the coat.
Thank you. So, New York is one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world, but we don't really have a lot of maker spaces where people can go code.
Okay, speed round. What's your question?
I'm just saying, I want to know what you're going to do to
More maker spaces? James Patchett. Yeah, come on, faster, James Patchett.
10
More
seconds for
maker
you, too.
spaces. What are we doing? In a word, let's do the fast version. Go.
Putting more in our city assets as soon as possible.
Could you do that in English now?
We own buildings. We're going to put money into it to make it possible for more people who have business ideas to put their businesses in those buildings.
Perfect. Thank you. Follow up with him. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Ben. Keep going. Fast questions.
Ronnie.
Fast.
Ronnie, 10
very
seconds
fast,
or less.
please.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, fast question.
One question. I want to thank Commissioner Garcia. Did a good job of the...
That's not a question, Ronnie. What's the question?
Quick question. What are you going to be doing about the bus routes?
The bus routes, as I said, there's going to be a new select bus service route. Still some work to do with the MTA. I think a very good possibility is it will be on 96th Street. Go ahead.
Young man in the blue shirt who rides down with me to City Hall every year.
There you go.
On a bike.
In regards to congestion pricing,
Yes,
why support the million tons good idea, but why support that at this point, which has a very low chance of actually passing through a Republican
I think
Assembly over congestion
look,
pricing, which actually has a chance.
That was a very fast question. I already knew where it was going because I get this question all the time. Look, one, I believe the millionaire's tax is more fair. It is a quintessential progressive tax. Two, remember, the millionaire's tax that we proposed was just on New York City residents, not suburban residents, which takes away the challenge from the Republican State Senate, which represents the suburbs. I think that has at least as much a chance of passing as congestion pricing that same Republican Senate has been traditionally against. So we'll see what the new proposal is on congestion pricing. We'll weigh it. We'll see if it's something that is more viable than previous ones. I believe my idea is a clear progressive tax and will yield the kind of money we need to fix the MTA.
Young lady in the very back in the black jacket.
Mr. Mayor.
Lightning round, go.
Okay, please ask Zachary Carter to be fair in the judiciary system. I need help. I love you. I follow you everywhere, and you know my problem.
Yeah.
Please help me. You hold my future.
Okay, I thank you. That was very profound. Harold, will you follow up on that, please?
In the very back from the East 72nd Street Neighborhood Association, Valerie Mason.
Thank you. Quickly, you installed, I think it's DOT's jurisdiction, quote unquote, new lighting up around the Upper East Side, even though we didn't want the lights. These new lights are completely inadequate in terms of the light that they put off. We have elderly people.
Okay.
So I want to know if you can look at that, especially in view of the fact that we have a lot of store closures and buildings being warehoused.
Okay,
there's no
I got you. Fast to you, Commissioner. Look, the complaint in a lot of places is we put in the new lighting that was more energy efficient and it was too bright to a lot of people.
Correct.
It's actually the first time I've heard someone say it's too dim.
Me too, but we can have our lighting teams come out and measure the lighting
Will you
levels.
see the commissioner
We'll
after? So
follow
we're going
up.
to come and assess, because obviously if it's too dim, that's not something that's acceptable to us and we need to fix. Thank you.
In the front, Mr. Mack.
Very quick question, yes or no? Will you support in the next budget money for the second ramp for the MTS?
Yeah, we're going to do the second ramp. I don't know
So
if
it's going to be in the budget for the...
Hold on. I'm trying to answer you with precision, but I need to check Catherine. Catherine, is it already budgeted or not? Where are you? Where are you, Catherine? I hear your voice.
Commissioner Garcia, is the second ramp funded?
It's in the budget already. Thank you, it's in the budget already. That's a yes. Go ahead.
Our NYCHA Isaacs president, Mrs. Bergen.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here once again. Bergen with an I. My question has to do with bus lanes. Why have bus lanes when the bus lanes can't drive in the bus lanes because all the cars and trucks are parked in them? So what do we do about this? 2nd Avenue, 3rd Avenue, 1st Avenue. You can never, the bus can't drive in the bus lane.
I got it. Okay, Commissioner Trottenberg, what's
I think
our
this is
broad...
also sort of an enforcement question.
Yeah, but maybe you, or we can work with PD. The broad point, the concept is only as good as the enforcement. What is the vision with PD to achieve that enforcement? Real quick version.
Well, we have some ability, thanks to our leadership up in Albany, to use cameras to enforce, but we can't use them everywhere, unfortunately. The city is limited in how we can use them. So we do partner with PD on bus enforcement, and it's a challenge. I think it would be better if we could do it all with cameras, but I think PD can speak about their their enforcement efforts, and it can be pretty challenging.
Okay. Keeping the bus lanes clear.
Just along 2nd Avenue alone, year-to-date in 2017, we have about 41,000 parking summons working with our traffic unit. Parking summons issued to double park cars, but 29,000 of those are issued to commercial vehicles, so it's an enforcement thing that's ongoing right now.
Do we ever tow if the bus lane is blocked?
If we have a particular problem, we usually call in the tow trucks and we do tow. But the only time we did tow was we had an issue with Fresh Direct that was using the street of storage, and we towed it.
So the point is, cameras where we got them, a lot of enforcement otherwise. My only point, Inspector, would be some towing tends to help change behavior. So.
Mrs. Brown.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for coming. We certainly appreciate it. I've been a long supporter of all your programs for housing and
10-second speed round question.
Thank you.
Now, my question is regarding Section 3. Would you please provide a professional Section 3 training for government, NYCHA management, CBOs, and also who owns homes projects? I serve as co-chair of the CB8 Housing Committee, and we submitted questions to the chair, to NYCHA,
right,
as well as HPP.
Okay, so who owns homes? So again, it's one question per person, but since it's already out there, very quick. Who owns homes project?
The New York City Housing Authority.
That is us, New York City Housing Authority. Okay, and Section 3. Yes, look, I would say a two-part simple answer. Yes, I want everyone trained in Section 3, but I also believe Section 3 is misunderstood, and people think it has more power and more teeth than it does. Section 3 does not achieve what it should achieve, is the honest truth. We want to do the very same concept locally more effectively. We've got to do a better job of it. We've been trying, but I want to see us do a much better job. So training, yes, even more important to create our own version of it and apply it consistently. That's the goal.
Young lady in the front with the green sweater.
Thank you. Mayor de Blasio, we're concerned about the budget in Albany, and we're watching elected Democrats, many
And your
from the
10-second
city,
speed round question.
block progressive legislation. How are you going to help us defeat the Independent Democratic Conference, the IDC?
I thank you very much for that question. My position's abundantly clear. The IDC needs to come back to the Democratic Party right now or suffer the consequences. And it will mean every one of us will do whatever it takes. So, I think at this point, enough welcome has been extended, and people have to get serious. It's time to come back, and they should come back before the budget, which is April 1st. So, otherwise, there's no question there's a huge movement in this city that wants to only elect Democrats who are going to serve as Democrats and not facilitate the work of the Republican majority.
In the red sweater.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for being here. I'm an avid bicyclist, and I'm thrilled that we have so many protected bike lanes, and I'm wondering, would it be possible, we were talking about the difficulty with crosstown travel, to have protected bike lanes in the transverses? 86th Street, 79th, going through the park, 96th.
Interesting. I had not heard that one before. What do you think, Commissioner?
I might need to get a Parks colleague up for that. And I don't know if you did see today, we have announced we are now starting, we'd already announced we're going to do a crosstown bike lane on 13th Street for the L train shutdown. We're now looking at 22nd and 26th Street, and then potentially talking about some crosstown protected bike lanes in the 50s, and then eventually working our way into Denver. So we're going to be doing a lot of work this year to try and improve those connections in Midtown. I had not thought of the transverse, maybe something
that is a novel, this one will take some study, but that is a novel idea. You're literally the first person I've ever heard say that, so thank you. Let's consider it.
Okay.
Thank you.
The two young ladies over there, it seems like you may have a joint question.
We do.
Yes, we're concerned with the moving of the garment district to Brooklyn. We are costume designers. We work in theater, film, and television. And fashion, our livelihoods, Broadway shows that bring so many tourists into here, film and television makers will not be able to serve the community. Broadway theaters are in Midtown. The costume shops are in Midtown. All of our vendors are in Midtown.
No, I think
How
you raised
can
it.
you allow this to go forward?
So thank you. The previous proposal got pulled back and is being looked at again. Look, first let's get, your point is very honest and real, and I think there are people who very much are ready to stay in that area, and that's good. There's also been a huge reduction in that industry, and there are a lot of folks in that industry who think Brooklyn will work better for them. It doesn't mean it's for everyone. I'm sorry, there are, because they're already coming out there. I'm meeting you halfway and acknowledging your good point. I'm asking you to understand a factual matter. There are people who want to go to Brooklyn. It doesn't matter if you don't want to go to Brooklyn, you get to make your own choice. There are others who do want to go to Brooklyn. So what we're trying to figure out is how to strike a balance. We don't think if we leave the status quo that that's going to work for everyone. So we think what's in Sunset Park is important to keep the industry here in the city. The question is now what we do to accommodate people within the garment center. You want it? Again, I'm not going to have a back and forth with you. I'm making a point. If some people are already going there, it must not be too remote for them because they're already there. If it doesn't work for you, let's see how we can help you and others who want to stay where they are. Go ahead.
Lita, the new chair of Community Board 8.
What happened to the light, Ben?
I was asking the staff that myself.
Down, please. Were you trying to create atmosphere?
It's late.
Could we have candles next? I think it would be lovely.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm asking about small business and what the administration plans to do to help the mom and pops and limit the proliferation of the banks, the chain stores, and the vacant storefronts.
Thank you very much. So I'll try and do this lightning round style. The things that we have done already, the reduction in the fines for small businesses, about a 40% reduction compared to the previous administration. We're going to try and further reduce. That can mean thousands of dollars a year for a small business. Legal assistance for small business through Department of Small Business Services to deal with their landlords, their leases, et cetera. We've helped small businesses get tax breaks, and specifically working with the council did the reduction in the commercial rent tax. The big factor we don't have yet, which would require state approval, is something like a vacancy fee or vacancy tax. We're very interested in this idea. We don't know exactly how to legally structure it, but it stands to reason. Some of these landlords are leaving spaces open for a ludicrous amount of time. That's not fair to the neighborhood. We're trying to find some mechanism to put a financial sanction on that, and we would love support on that. Thank you.
If we can figure out a way to do it, I have a legislative service request on it. Frank France from Roosevelt Island.
No, it would take the state.
Fair
state
enough.
legislation. Yeah, I'm sorry, I should make that abundantly clear. That one will require state legislation, and if people like that idea, we're going to try and formulate it quickly. We're going to need a lot of help pushing the state assembly and the state senate to get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just skip the question.
There's a lot of corruption in the city. DOI does a lousy job, and
these are editorial comments, but continue.
Frank,
no, just so what Controller Stringer has pointed out lots of problems. What are you going to do about the poor investigative service of Department of Investigation?
I just don't agree with yours. I think there are problems in the city. I think the city is so much better than it was not even that long ago. I think we've steadily reduced waste and fraud and corruption and all sorts of things in city government. It does not mean that we're perfect yet. We got more to do. But I think if you look at the number of people who were arrested through DOI investigations in the last 4 years, it's a pretty hefty number.
The young lady in the gray sweater.
Okay, we got time for 3 more, so this will be one of 3.
Thank you. I'd like to ask about construction along East 86th Street. We have a select bus service, but for 2nd Avenue subway, 10 years, and now another year after that, just massive construction along East 86th Street. When will it be finished?
Massive construction on East 86th. And I don't know, do you know, Anna, the different parts of the construction on East 86th? Is it?
I was going to take your mic. Construction on East 86th
Closer.
Street. In the spring, we're going to go back and finish the planting, but we have done most of the work already.
Okay, but which, there's more than one thing going on East 86, right? That's all DDC only? Is that the only
Yes.
thing? Okay, so help say that again for clarity. When would it all be finished?
In the spring.
In the spring. Okay, thank you.
There's a young lady from the community board in the black shirt.
As Chancellor Farina steps down and we transition to new leadership, where do we stand with our efforts to desegregate our public schools?
So, look, there's been a steady effort and it's going to keep growing. There was a very important initiative in downtown Brooklyn. There was a very important initiative on the West Side in District 3. Every time we see a local opportunity to act, we are working with local school leaders. We also have a lot of schools that are creating their own individual plans, which we're supporting. I think it's going to be one of these things of constantly looking for every opportunity to make a change. We're moving away from certain admissions practices. We're moving away from the way that tours are given in schools that in many ways had an inadvertent discriminatory impact. It's going to be a steady effort that I think will yield fruit more each year. The thing that we do not control, and I want to control, but requires state legislation, is the specialized schools, which I believe, and I think this is going to be possible when we have a new state Senate leadership, that we should end the single test admission for specialized schools because it has proven to create a very unrepresentative student body in our most prized schools. So that I'm going to work on. Last call.
Community Board 11, John Green in the last row, who lives at NYCHA Lexington Houses and is our representative from there.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. What can you do about the lack of communication with NYCHA? The council member knows that I had a problem in my apartment, and without his help, I would probably still be waiting for the work to be done.
I don't know what the lack of communication means. I do know that NYCHA needs to do a better job addressing specific concerns and also letting people know what they're doing about it. NYCHA has a tough job. Billions upon billions, tens of billions in investments that were never made in the past that are hindering everything that NYCHA does and obviously affecting the residents in a really bad way. So they're dealing with a constant uphill battle. That being said, my mandate to NYCHA is to make repairs quickly and tell people what they're doing and update people on what's going on. I think the chair, given that she is up against a really tough physical reality, has done a good job marshaling her forces. But I know we can do better at communicating with people about what we're doing when each problem arises.
And we'll come and talk offline if there's a specific issue that you are requiring assistance with me. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, council member. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.